The Roman army arrived on the shores of the Holy Land in 63 BCE. About 135 years later, the temple in Jerusalem lay in ruins, and the third and most enduring expulsion of the Jews from their homeland was underway. If the Assyrian and Babylonian exiles had been traumatic and even cataclysmic events, the Roman exile was all that and something more. For the first time, perhaps, Jews moved outside their land with no real prospect of having a home to return to. The religious and national structures of the Jewish people were in complete disarray, and the Jews would be forced to create a new self-identity. The Jewish people had enjoyed autonomy in Judea since the famous Hanukkah victory over the Greeks in the 2nd century BCE, but Greek culture, known as Hellenism, remained highly influential among Jews even after they regained their independence under the family known as the Hasmoneans. So much so that by the time the Romans took over from the Greeks as imperial rulers in the region, the vast majority of Jews were living abroad in communities like Alexandria, Egypt, where 40% of the population is estimated to have been Jewish in the 1st century BCE. For the most part, the Jews flourished under the tolerant rule of the Greeks and the Persians before them. At the beginning, the Romans were also relatively benign, but as time went on, their administration became chaotic and cruel. They forcibly introduced pagan elements into the temple and didn't hesitate to rule with an iron fist. All of this posed existential challenges for the Jewish population. During the 1st century CE, some Jews had decided that the time had come to take up arms against the mighty Roman Empire. To appreciate how events unfolded, we need to go back to the year 63 BCE, when the Roman general Pompey led an invasion into the country. The ruling Jewish Hasmonean dynasty was really in disarray at the time. To say that it was dysfunctional would be something of an understatement. In fact, Pompey arrived at the invitation of a Hasmonean ruler who was battling his own brother for the throne. Both of the warring brothers went out to greet him, each hoping that he could win the Roman support for his bid to become the undisputed ruler over Judea. Pompey, for his part, just proceeded to sack Jerusalem. The Romans allowed the Hasmoneans to continue to rule for the time being, but Pompey installed a Roman governor to administer Judea. 2 decades later, a new phase in the Roman occupation began with a man named Herod. Herod's family background seems to have left him a conflicted man. Although he was a Jew, his grandfather was an Edomite who was among those who had been forcibly converted to Judaism by the Hasmonean leader John Hyrcanus in the 2nd century BCE. Whether this caused Herod to have divided loyalties is unclear, but there's no doubt that his legacy for the Jewish people was a complex one, as we'll soon see. In 44 BCE, the year Julius Caesar was assassinated, the Hasmoneans appointed Herod governor of the Galilee. His rule as governor was brutal and marked by a greater allegiance to Rome than to the Hasmoneans in Jerusalem. By 40 BCE, Herod had befriended the Roman leader Mark Antony. Antony convinced the Roman Senate to declare Herod king of the Jews. With Roman backing, Herod spent the next 3 years besieging Jerusalem, eventually defeating the Hasmoneans and stripping them of power. To boost his legitimacy for the throne, he married a Hasmonean princess named Mariamna. For the next 33 years, Herod ruled Judea, the mountainous southern part of the land of Israel, where the Hasmoneans had ruled over a largely autonomous Jewish state. To ensure that the Hasmoneans would never again challenge him, Herod went on a killing spree, putting to death his own wife Mariamna after 13 years of marriage, as well as his mother-in-law and his 2 sons. He also murdered his wife's brother Aristobulus, heir to the Hasmonean throne, and the Hasmonean king Hyrcanus II, who had intervened to save Herod from charges of murder before the Sanhedrin, the Supreme Court, earlier in his career. And speaking of the Supreme Court, Herod ensured that they would never get in his way. He ordered the execution of 45 members of the Sanhedrin. These men were great rabbis, the leading Torah scholars of the generation. Herod's actions caused the Sanhedrin, once the most powerful legislative and judicial body in Israel, to lose its influence. While Herod acted as a despotic tyrant, there was also another side to him. He worked to maintain order and lowered taxes. He improved conditions for the poor and the hungry and assisted farmers. And Herod has often been praised as a great benefactor and protector of Jewish communities in the diaspora. Herod also subsidized building projects such as gymnasiums and theaters throughout the Eastern Mediterranean. And Jews from all over would make pilgrimage to Herod's temple, come to Jerusalem to study, and even pay a half-shekel tax for the temple's upkeep. It may be that Herod did these things to portray himself as the leader of global Jewry. Others suggest that his international projects weren't necessarily aimed at Jewish communities, and note that they often promoted Greek culture. Herod, like many Jews at the time, embraced and promoted the cultural ideas of the Hellenistic world. Assimilation was rampant in his day. It could also be that Herod sought to create supporters from among Jews who were not loyal to the Hasmoneans and who were more tolerant of Hellenistic culture. Whatever his true motivations were, Herod's policies changed the nature of Judea, created the precedent of diaspora relations, and led to a more diverse Jewish society. For all of the chaotic aspects of his reign, Herod may be most remembered as Herod the Builder. He directed many great construction projects, but Herod's greatest achievement was the renovation he undertook on the temple. Herod's temple was far more glorious in appearance than the previous temples, and was one of the most magnificent buildings in the ancient world. True to form, though, Herod couldn't leave it at that. He put a Roman eagle on the temple's facade, an act which caused great offense and sparked riots. Because of the Romans' destruction of the temple in 70 CE, all that's left of Herod's temple now is the retaining wall for the Temple Mount, the most famous section of which is known as the Western Wall, or Wailing Wall. The Talmud remembers Herod as a cruel tyrant. When he died in 4 BCE, the people breathed a collective sigh of relief. Life wouldn't get any easier, though. Direct Roman rule returned to Judea. The Jews remained subjects of imperial Rome for several centuries until the power of Rome itself disintegrated. During these times, whatever self-government that the Jews were able to exercise was wholly dependent on the whims of the Roman emperor. Tensions were escalating, and fast. Judea was becoming more clearly a Roman province, and the Sanhedrin was being stripped of whatever power it still maintained. Jewish zealots, who had been working since the Roman invasion to oppose the assault on Jewish sovereignty and the desecration of the temple, led a revolt against Rome in the year 66 CE. This is sometimes called the Great Revolt. The Jewish people were divided about it. While the Roman occupation was widely unpopular, many Jews thought it futile and even suicidal to fight the most powerful empire in the world. But the anti-war voices did not prevail. The zealots scored some initial successes. They seized Jerusalem, much of the Galilee, and parts of the coast from Roman control. Within a year, though, the Romans had besieged Gamla and recaptured much of the Galilee. But it would still take 4 years for General Titus to conquer Jerusalem, which he did in 70 CE. The Romans, led by Titus, besieged the city for 5 months and destroyed the temple. Many Jews were taken captive to Rome, and approximately 1.1 million Jews were massacred, according to the historian Josephus. While other historians suggest that this may be too high a number, the death toll was surely enormous. Professor J.E. Lendon writes, for example, the siege of Jerusalem was probably the greatest single slaughter in ancient history. According to the Talmud, the temple was burnt down on the 9th day of the Jewish month of Av, remarkably the same day that the Babylonians had destroyed the first temple in the year 586 BCE. The events of Tisha B'Av, as it's called, are commemorated on the Jewish calendar with a special day of mourning, known as the saddest day of the year. The temple was ransacked, and sacred vessels, including the menorah that was lit every day, were taken to Rome as spoils of war. Visitors to Rome can still see the Arch of Titus, which stands by the Colosseum and depicts the looting by the Roman soldiers. Another insult to Jewish pride in the aftermath of the war was the creation of Fiscus Judaicus. This agency collected a tax from all Jews throughout the Roman Empire. The revenues went to the Temple of Jupiter in Rome, essentially forcing the Jews to subsidize the pagan worship of the Romans in place of the tribute they used to pay for the upkeep of the now-destroyed Jewish temple in Jerusalem. The symbolism wasn't too hard to see. The gods of the triumphant Romans were superior, and now it was obligatory for the Jews to serve them. The Romans also minted coins with the words Judea Capta, meaning Judea captive, to commemorate the victory. Now, that's actually pretty crazy. The strongest military in the ancient world goes all out to celebrate the defeat of the Jews, an irregular, small army that lacked sophisticated weaponry, but managed to hold out for 4 years in a war that cost many Roman lives. Judea was the most rebellious province in the Roman Empire for a reason. The Jewish sense of national unity and their devotion to the one true God would not allow them to submit to the Roman pagan beliefs and way of life, even if they could not agree on how best to oppose it. The extraordinary resistance by the Jewish defenders was supported by diaspora Jews in Babylon and in Persia, and it quickly became a source of inspiration for Jews everywhere. The Jewish people would live under Roman rule for more than 500 years until the fall of the Roman Empire in 476 CE. The Roman occupation not only affected the political and social institutions of an ancient Jewish society, it challenged Jews to develop new religious and national identities. With the temple gone, where and how would Jews direct their spiritual energy? Without an effective court and legislature to guide them, how would they continue to have leadership and laws that evolved to reflect the reality of their changing lives? Without any remnant of sovereignty, and opposed by the strongest army and empire the world had ever seen, how could they hope to maintain national pride and identity? The stresses placed upon the Jewish people at this time were so great that it should have gone the way of so many other nations and disappeared completely from the historical stage. But it didn't. You see, there were a few Jewish people who were determined not to let that happen. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode and want to learn more about these people and their enormous contributions, stay tuned for our next episode.